Hi Evely, and I will tell you one story of a good viewing. In the dim twilight of an autumn evening, as the town of Willow's End slumbered beneath a cloak of creeping fog, there resided a woman unlike any other. Margot Delacroix, once a celebrated socialite of refined grace, had become the subject of hushed whispers and fearful glances. While the rest of the world surrendered to the slow, relentless decay of time, faces lined with sorrow, hair turning to silver, Margot's visage defied nature. Every day, as the years pressed in on everyone else, she found herself growing inexplicably younger. First, it was merely a subtle softening of wrinkles. Then a luminous quality returned to her eyes, and soon, her features regressed into the haunting semblance of youth. This reversal was as mesmerizing as it was disturbing, a secret that blurred the boundaries between miracle and curse. Margot lived in a sprawling, crumbling mansion at the edge of town, a relic of an era long past. Its once grand corridors now echoed with the lament of forgotten souls, and its faded tapestries whispered dark secrets to those brave enough to listen. The mansion, with its sagging roof and overgrown gardens, seemed to be a living embodiment of decay and mystery. Locals spoke of strange lights dancing in its windows on moonless nights, and some claimed to hear a chorus of voices, soft and desperate, emanating from its depths. To them, the mansion was not merely a building but a monument to a forbidden pact made in shadows and despair. On a particularly stormy night, as the wind howled and rain lashed against ancient stone, Margot found herself seated before an antique mirror, a family heirloom said to have witnessed generations of secrets. By its wavering reflection, she observed a transformation that defied logic. The deep lines etched by years of hardship began to recede, and her eyes, once heavy with the burden of sorrow, sparkled with an unsettling vibrancy. With each passing hour, the metamorphosis accelerated, as though some dark force was draining the very essence of time from her being. The thrill of eternal youth was intoxicating, yet it carried with it an undercurrent of horror, a premonition of doom that clawed at the edges of her mind. That night, as thunder rumbled in the distance, Margot heard a sound that would forever shatter the fragile boundary between her reality and the realm of nightmares. Soft, anguished weeping seeped through the crevices of the mansion, drawing her toward a long-forgotten wing draped in decay. There, in a dusty parlor dominated by a silent, dilapidated piano, the weeping crescendoed into a dirge of sorrow. The keys of the instrument moved on their own accord, producing a discordant melody that resonated with the agonized cries of unseen children. In the trembling light of a guttering candle, ghostly figures materialized, pale, spectral children with eyes that shimmered with unspeakable pain. They reached out with transparent hands, as if imploring her to atone for a sin she could not yet comprehend. As the spectral apparitions faded into the darkness, the mansion itself seemed to pulse with a malignant life. In the days that followed, the unnatural began to seep into every corner of Willow's End. Neighbors reported glimpses of a gaunt, pallid figure drifting among the headstones in the old cemetery, a figure whose face, etched in eternal sorrow, mirrored Margot's own paradoxical existence. Livestock disappeared from their pens under mysterious circumstances, and the very earth seemed to tremble as if echoing the heartbeat of a malevolent force. At times, the windows of the Delacroix mansion would glow with an eerie luminescence, and in those moments, the boundary between the world of the living and the realm of the dead blurred into an indistinguishable haze. Driven by a mounting dread and desperate for answers, Margot sought refuge among the crumbling pages of her family's ancient ledgers and forbidden diaries. Hidden in the recesses of the mansion's vast, dusty library, she uncovered cryptic references to a long-forgotten ritual, a dark covenant struck by her ancestors with an unknown entity lurking beyond mortal ken. The text spoke of eternal youth as a reward, but also of a terrible price. Each moment of regained youth came at the expense of another's fading life force. The air in the library grew icy, and shadows began to writhe along the walls, as if eager to reclaim the secrets that had been disturbed. Margot's fingers trembled as she deciphered the archaic script, a script that warned of a cyclical torment, where the blessed gift of youth was inexorably bound to unspeakable horrors and isolation. Then, On a morning that dawned with an unsettling stillness, Margot awoke to a nightmare made flesh. Stumbling into her mirror-lit chamber, she gasped at the sight that greeted her. Her reflection had transformed into that of a wide-eyed child, pale and unnaturally serene, yet with an undercurrent of malevolence that sent shivers down her spine. The room grew inexplicably cold, and as she stared, transfixed by the ghastly visage, she sensed a presence lurking behind her, a spectral echo of every lost soul and every anguished scream that had ever haunted the mansion's halls. It was as though the mirror had become a portal, bridging her tormented present with a past steeped in blood and sorrow. Heart-pounding and mind-reeling, Margot realized that the unnatural reversal of her age was not a mere quirk of fate but a harbinger of a far darker destiny. The inexplicable phenomena, the ghostly apparitions, and the cryptic warnings inscribed in ancient tomes all converged into one undeniable truth: the gift of eternal youth was inextricably linked to a curse, one that demanded a relentless and unspeakable sacrifice. Clad in the eerie glow of dawn, Margot resolved to confront the forces that had ensnared her, to peel back the layers of mystery that had bound her soul to the mansion's spectral legacy. As she stepped out into the cold, pre-dawn air, the silence of the world felt oppressive. Each gust of wind carried a whisper of impending doom, and every shadow seemed to conceal lurking horrors. In the distance, beneath the gnarled boughs of ancient oaks, a solitary figure emerged from the murk. Its approach was slow and deliberate, each step measured and resonant with an otherworldly purpose. Margot's pulse thundered in her ears as she drew closer to the figure, its features indistinct in the dim light yet radiating an aura of dreadful inevitability. In that fraught moment, as the boundaries between past and present, life and death, began to crumble, Margot felt the chilling certainty that her journey into darkness was only just beginning. Margot's trembling steps led her deeper into the mansion's labyrinthine corridors. The pallid light of a waning moon filtered through warped stained glass, splintering the darkness into shards of spectral color. Each footfall echoed like a dirge, marking her passage into realms where time itself seemed to unravel. Determined to confront the curse that had stolen her years and her sanity, she pushed forward into chambers long forgotten by the living. At the end of a narrow passage, behind a door swollen with age, Margot discovered a secret room cloaked in oppressive gloom. The walls were lined with portraits of her ancestors, their eyes following her with an unsettling, almost sentient intensity. In the center of the room lay an altar fashioned from blackened stone, etched with archaic symbols that pulsed faintly as if alive. The altar bore fresh stains of crimson, a stark reminder of sacrifices made long ago. A rancid odor of decay and old blood permeated the space, and the air itself felt heavy with the weight of unspeakable sins. Before Margot could gather her thoughts, the silence shattered. A low, guttural chant emanated from somewhere beyond the room's confines. It was as if unseen entities had gathered for a grotesque rite, their voices merging into a singular, unholy lament. The walls trembled under the force of their incantations, and a chilling wind snaked through the cracks, carrying with it the whispers of tortured souls. The portrait's eyes began to weep spectral tears, each drop a frozen fragment of lost hope. As Margot's heart pounded in her chest, the floor beneath the altar slowly split open, revealing a gaping maw lined with jagged stone and flickering, phosphorescent lights. From this abyss, a torrent of shadowy figures spilled forth, twisted remnants of lives once lived, now condemned to eternal torment. Their anguished wails filled the chamber, each cry a stark reminder of the cursed bargain that had granted her unholy youth. The figures swirled around her, their forms contorting into ghastly parodies of humanity, as if trying to drag her into the pit of oblivion. Desperation clawed at Margot's mind as she backed away, her breath coming in ragged, panicked gasps. Yet, as she retreated, her eyes caught sight of a large, leather-bound tome resting upon a pedestal in a shadowed alcove. Its cover was emblazoned with the same eldritch symbols that marred the altar. With trembling hands, she opened the book, its brittle pages revealing a narrative of her family's dark legacy, a covenant forged in blood and sealed with the promise of eternal youth. The text spoke of a ritual performed on a fateful night when the barrier between worlds thinned, allowing an ancient, insidious entity to seep into their bloodline. In exchange for reversing the ravages of time, the pact demanded a continual sacrifice. A life must be taken for every moment stolen from the natural progression of age. Margot's mind reeled as the implications sunk in. The spectral figures that now danced around her were not random apparitions. They were the lost souls of those sacrificed to maintain her unnatural state. A horrid realization gripped her. Each day of her rejuvenation was built upon a foundation of cruelty and torment. The mansion, the portraits, the altar. They were all sinister relics of a bargain that defied human decency. Outside the secret chamber, the mansion itself seemed to rebel against the night. Corridors stretched impossibly long, and doorways led to rooms that should not exist. The very fabric of reality was fraying, as if the mansion were a nexus of malevolent energy. Shadows bled into the walls, and the clamor of unseen presences grew ever louder. In one such room, Margot discovered a mirror unlike any other, a circular, ornate mirror that radiated an uncanny luminescence. As she gazed into it, she did not see her own reflection. Instead, a parade of grim visages flickered before her eyes. The contorted expressions of those condemned by the ancient pact, their eyes brimming with sorrow and malice. A sudden, bone-chilling shriek rent the air, a sound so raw and primal that it seemed to claw at the edges of her sanity. The mirror cracked, splintering into a web of fractures that radiated outward like spider veins. In that instant, the boundary between her present and the realm of the damned dissolved entirely. The shriek was joined by the relentless pounding of 1,000 spectral hearts, all beating in a macabre symphony that heralded the final reckoning. Margot staggered away, driven by a mix of terror and a desperate need for redemption. She recalled the cryptic incantations from the ancient tome, scattered among the passages of her family's dark history. With a voice that trembled between defiance and despair, she began to recite the forbidden words. The mansion shuddered in response. Its foundations groaned as if burdened by the weight of forgotten atrocities. Shadows gathered around her, converging into a vortex of despair that threatened to swallow her whole. In that moment, the air turned frigid, and the walls wept with a cold, mournful sweat. As the incantation reached its climax, the spectral figures paused, their tormented eyes fixed upon her. The ground split again, and from the darkness emerged a towering figure, a being of primordial malice, its form shifting and indefinable, composed of both light and void. Its voice resonated in the silence, a sound that transcended time and space, carrying the finality of death. "You have tampered with forces beyond mortal ken," it intoned, its words echoing in the hollows of Margot's soul. "The price of your stolen youth is the surrender of all that you hold dear." In that final, crushing moment, Margot felt the true horror of her existence. The spectral figures surged forward, and the mansion itself seemed to collapse inward, as if devoured by its own despair. The ancient entity extended a hand, a gesture of both retribution and mercy, and Margot found herself at the nexus of a final choice: to embrace the darkness and become one with the cursed legacy, or to sacrifice herself to break the cycle of torment. As the cold tendrils of inevitability wrapped around her, she realized that every heartbeat had been borrowed, every moment stolen from the natural order. The curse was not just her burden. It was a curse upon the very soul of the mansion, upon the town, and upon every life that had been sacrificed in the pursuit of eternal youth. In the echo of that fateful night, as the mansion fell silent and the specters receded into the mists of memory, a single truth remained undeniable. Some bargains, once struck, can never be undone. The mansion's ruins now stood as a grim monument to a dark chapter of forgotten history, a place where time itself was fractured, and the whispers of the past wove a tapestry of endless torment. And in the cold void between moments, Margot's fate hung suspended, a chilling reminder that even the most desperate wish for youth may demand the ultimate price. Thank you very much, and see you all in the next video.